welcome Laura and Castille to our conversation on climate issues and climate justice issues in New Mexico as we're heading into the long 2021 legislative session and the Youth for a Secure Water and Climate Future program. We are super excited to have you both on. And
well, hi, my name is Castille Aguilar. I'm a campaign organizer for YUCCA, Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, which is a youth-led, primarily BIPOC group of youth. I personally grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, so a lot of these issues are really near and dear to me for our communities.
Thanks, Castille. Great to have you. And Laura, I've got to say I've been a fan for a little bit of time. Can you tell students who might not know who you are about yourself?
Thank you. So thanks for having me today. I'm a reporter and I've been covering the environment since 2002. It's the most important issue to me. The water we drink, the planet we live on, the ways we relate to one another. And I am really honored and excited to be here today because I am so excited about the youth activism that's happening in New Mexico and around the world. And it's the thing that gives me the greatest amount of hope and excitement.
Could you talk a little bit more about what it means to bring immediacy to climate issues?
You know, as somebody who grew up here and grew up in feet of snow, you know, this is horrifying to see, quite frankly, this year. And people, unfortunately, are turning a blind eye, pretending that these issues don't exist. And part of that is that we're, you know, some big problems is that we're not holding our folks accountable. We're not holding our governments accountable. And we're not holding, you know, our big industries accountable. For example, our extractive industries, or our presidents or our legislators, which is really big, and we're not doing that. And quite frankly, we're not taking big enough action. You know, PNM will say, oh, you know, we give out, you know, grants to help utility debt forgiveness and, you know, stuff like that, where it's like, that's great. But what we need is to be transitioning out of these extractive industries and into something that is more sustainable, not only for our economy and our communities, but also for our environment, for our world. In terms of, you know, specifically around framing, there's not much framing. People are just acting like it doesn't exist. And the people that are really pushing for this, like, you know, the youth and small businesses, it's just not enough. Because not everybody is doing their part, right? And we know that we have about 9 years until we, you know, to get it together before scientists have warned that it's irreversible and we're gonna, you know, that's past the tipping point for us, unless we dramatically decrease our emissions by 2030.
You know, Laura, I think you do a really good job navigating this in your recent book, which Castille brought up tipping points, and that's what your book's all about, right? Called At the Precipice, and I'll plug it for you now. It's available from it's available through UNM, correct? Through their book publishing network, yeah. But can you talk a little bit more about what that title means, At the Precipice, and how it relates to tipping points?
Yeah, so I really feel like, you know, I've been covering climate change for almost 20 years now. And to me, like, it would be so easy to just fall off that edge. But I also think, like, and I know this is like super cheesy, but I also feel like when you're at that edge sometimes, like, you can take that choice to jump and to fly and to really make a big change. And so I feel like in New Mexico, even though we have like all these great challenges, there is no place in the world I would rather be to be trying to meet these challenges, because in New Mexico, we love our landscapes, we love our communities. With a few exceptions, some people I will not name, their hearts are not filled with love, but I feel like in New Mexico, like we love one another and we want to take care of one another and we want to take care of our landscapes.
Castille, how in that 9 years, how do you think about that? How do you conceptualize what needs to be done?
So I'll start with, the not so promising ones so we can get uplifted in a bit. But Laura, I'm going to have to read your book now that I know about it. But in terms of, what those current issues look like, other than, I talked about accountability earlier, but we're still seeing things like illegal dumping. Amendments to the Produce Water Act are going through the legislative session. And the fact that we even have to talk about how that causes health hazards, and that it's toxic waste, and that our indigenous communities in New Mexico bear the brunt of a lot of these climate and environmental hazard issues, is really just ridiculous, if we're being honest. And it's really heartbreaking to think about. And part of that is a lot of people in these communities don't have a say. And instead, a lot of our government is working really closely with things like extractive industries and our monopoly utilities, which is super problematic, and creates a lot of vulnerability areas and a lot of threats. So in terms of now uplifting all of that bummer, there are things that we can do. A lot of it, unfortunately, is not being done yet. But we're looking, this year was the biggest year pretty much that we had youth turnout for voter election stuff, which is huge and amazing. This is also, the biggest year that people from our BIPOC and our queer community got elected into positions of power, which is huge to have that amount of representation, especially in places that you wouldn't expect it. We should, not all of us do, think about rights being, clean air, clean water, suitable places to live that aren't toxic dump sites, or, there's a lot that goes into all of that, but we should have a right to these things. They should be written in somewhere. And this year for the legislative session, we're excited to be on the steering committee for the Green Amendment, which would be a constitutional amendment to the Bill of Rights that makes sure folks are guaranteed these things: the right to clean air, clean water, clean and suitable land, and stable environments.
Laura, in terms of your work covering climate, talk a little bit more about what do you think about missed opportunities and some ways that we can capitalize on those things.
Got it. I was like mad, like I always am. Like we missed all these opportunities all these years. And I get all mad, but for some reason, like maybe it was because of a little bit of hopefulness over the climate executive order yesterday, but I actually like flipped that and started feeling like, oh my gosh, so we know what we have to do. We know how to do it. We know how much time we have, right? Like Castille was saying, we have like a decade. And seeing how little we have done made me think, oh my gosh, there's so much we can do. It's not like we've been doing as much as we can and fighting as hard as we can and cutting all emissions, and climate is changing at a pace so fast that we can't keep up. We've hardly done anything. So we have all these opportunities, to take actual action and to really like get our butts in gear. And
how do you convince somebody who doesn't want to listen? How do you, like, that's the big conundrum, right? There are all these people who are really happy with how the status quo is right now and don't have this sort of long-term thinking that would really benefit the rest of us. So how do you change that? How do you transition that narrative. We're talking about narratives here. We're talking about these things that a lot of us can foresee as, we're at the precipice. How do you cause big oil and gas and extractive industries to back away from that edge?
I see journalism as a public service. Is like, I would become really frustrated. I mean, I've been writing about these issues for almost 20 years, and for them just now basically to be getting more attention used to really bum me out, because it felt like I'm working so hard to get these issues in front of the public and nobody seems to be paying attention. But for me, it really was like repetition.
It's not really that much different than what we do. um, you got to show up again and again and again. And each time for us, we show up with more people. And, the more Laura writes, people read that. People, will go off and write their own things, or go off to educate themselves and then tell all their friends.
So Laura and Castille, if you were, a high school student today or a middle school student today, what would you do?
So I've been obsessed with these issues since I was like environmental issues since I was a kid. I wrote a letter when I was 8 to President Reagan, like basically yelling at him for not taking better care of the environment. And I got this package back. The White House had sent my letter over to EPA, and the EPA sent me like this package of stuff. You don't have anything to lose at this point. I mean, really showing up and being opinionated and aggressive in appropriate ways is, you have so much power as a young person in your community. And old people like me will try to tell you that you can't vote, you can't do this, you can't show up, you can't do that. You have so much power. And I'm sorry that my generation and all the generations before have consistently failed you, but you have so much power, and I'm so grateful when I see you exhibiting that power. I'm very grateful.
Second, all of that. And like Laura, I've, been doing this work for about 8 years now. I actually got involved because one of my friends was involved and was doing a presentation at our school about it. And I thought that was really cool. So, like Laura said, really engaging with your peers can be a great way to get involved. I ended up doing youth organizing as like a middle high schooler because I just thought that was so rad. And then I found out that's what I want to dedicate my life's work to. Really, we need to act now. And Yucca actually has youth meetings. A little advertising here. Yucca has youth meetings that are open to the youth every other Tuesday. And I could give you an email to get in touch with that. Okay, you can get in touch with us at yucca@earthcarenm, like New Mexico.org.
No, I want to echo what Castille said, that you're not just looking out for your community. And if you have a voice, use your time to elevate the voices of people who might not have an audience or who.
I really appreciate you both for being here. And it's been an honor to host you both and have this conversation with you. I'm super excited to show this to our students and spread the good word about climate justice. Thank you so much for both being here.